Hello, my name is Josh. I wanted to make a DIY video on pest control because I've had a good amount of experience with doing pest control and using different chemicals to control bugs around me. And I've lived in a few different states where I've used this and found it to be very effective. So this is all my own information though, based on my own experience, and I will explain about how pesticides are to be used and also some of the pros and cons to each one. But again, it's only my own experience, so take it for what it's worth. First off, with the question of what to use, consider what kind of bug you are spraying for. So you may need to ID your pest first and then go from there. Most, in fact, all pest control or pesticide labels are going to have on their label the different bugs that it is effective for, and it may even have different concentrations at which you need to spray the pesticide in order to be effective for that specific bug. So it's good to read the label and to look at the label for that. Another thing that's important to look for is the location of your bug. You're going to spray differently if your bug is inside versus outside, or if it's the middle of the lawn, or if it's inside the structure, or whatever it may be. It's good to look at the location of your bug, and the label of the pesticide will often tell you different things about the pesticide based on the location of the pest you're trying to spray for. Another thing to consider is the local laws and regulations. There are so many different laws and so many different regulations. I'm not even going to attempt to address them here, but it's something that would be good to look into with pesticide spraying. For the most part, as long as you're spraying on your own property, it isn't a big deal as long as you are using it according to the label. But again, that label is going to be your best friend, and I would advise reading all of it because I have read all the labels on my pesticides, and it's been very helpful to know how to use the pesticide more appropriately. It's also important to read the label because it will tell you about surrounding plants that you may not want to spray. Some pesticides can kill the plants around, whether it's your grass or your trees, or it can poison your fruits and vegetables. So it's very important to read the label. It will tell you what you need to do. Something your label may not tell you is about avoiding spraying for bees. Bees are very important for your lawn, important for your flowers, for your fruits, for your vegetables, or whatever you are growing in your yard. Assuming you are growing anything, it's important to have bees there. So try to preserve them. We'll talk about that at the end as well. So these are the chemicals I use. I use bifenthrin, deltamethrin, fipronil, glue traps, delta dust, diatomaceous earth, and cyfluthrin. We'll talk a little bit about each one and how I use it and how I spray it as we go on. First off, with bifenthrin, some of the pros for this pesticide is it's super cheap, is very effective, can last about 4 weeks, and it's very broad spectrum, so it kills a lot of bugs, which is great. Some of the cons is it can leave a residue on the inside surfaces, so I don't like spraying it inside because I have seen residues with it, and it can usually, I guess part of one of the pros and cons is it only lasts about 4 weeks. So 4 weeks can be a long time, but depending on what kind of bug problem you have too, it may not last that long, and depending on where you spray it, it may not last that long either. So what I generally use this for is for spraying outside, on the outside of structures, up in eaves, and out away from the structure. So it is a very, very good pesticide for that because, like I said, it is pretty cheap and it works pretty effectively. It comes in a lot of different forms. I usually buy the SC form, which stands for suspended colloid. It's pretty easy to find. Most of these pesticides you won't be able to find at your local Walmart. You will have to go to some kind of hardware store, like, I shouldn't say hardware store, more like a country store, like, for instance, there's stores like IFA where I'm from, which stands for Intermountain Farmers Association. There's also stores like Cow Ranch and other stores where they're going to sell farming equipment will be a good place for you to get pesticides. And if you do have questions, just call them. They usually are pretty good about telling you if they do or don't have it. So that's it for bifenthrin. And again, you can read the label as far as to how much you should mix this with and how and where to spray. Deltamethrin also is a very effective one. It is in the same family as bifenthrin, and it works very similarly. Some of the pros to it is it does last more than 4 weeks, ideally, and that is going to be based on the exposure it has to ultraviolet rays from the sun and also from the water that's going to be trying to wash it away with rain and how much you water your lawn as well. It is broad spectrum, so it does kill a lot of bugs. One of the great things about it too is that it is a good knockdown agent for wasps and hornets and other flying terrors. So by knockdown agent, I mean you can go to the store and buy different sprays that will kill wasps nearly instantly, which is great because no one likes seeing wasps at a barbecue or really anywhere. So it's good for that, but the problem is that stuff is extremely expensive, and the stuff that you buy that can be propelled out of those cans can be extremely toxic, not only to plants, but to you also. So it's killing a wasp that fast, it can kill you that fast too. So I don't really like using that kind of stuff. Deltamethrin's a much better option. And I mean, it will kill still pretty quickly. It usually takes about less than a minute to do it, but it is a very effective pesticide for that. Some of the cons is it is a little more expensive than deltamethrin, but certainly not the most expensive, or I'm sorry, more expensive than bifenthrin, but it's definitely not the most expensive pesticide out there. And another difficult thing with it is it does have different mixing ratios for inside versus outside use, which can be confusing if you're not super savvy on those kind of things or are unfamiliar with it. But with a few uses, it's not too terribly difficult to get. Deltamethrin also is sold in an SC form, which is the form I prefer to buy it in, a suspended colloid. Again, you can pick that up at a place where you're going to find farming equipment, because they will very likely have that. Fipronil. Fipronil is a super effective pesticide against colony bugs, like termites, ants, hornets, and wasps. Now, the reason it's so effective is because it was specifically designed for colony bugs. And just as it says on that third bullet point, bugs can't really smell it. That's interesting to think about, bugs smelling things, but how pesticides generally work is bugs will get it on them, and then they will try to clean themselves, and they'll ingest it, and then that pesticide will work on their nervous system to essentially kill them. What's good about fipronil is they can't really sense that. So even if they walk right through it, they won't be able to sense it. Other pesticides like deltamethrin and bifenthrin and most other pesticides don't have that ability. So let's say you have an ant that walks through it, and then the other ants can smell, oh, well, that guy's got some deltamethrin on him, we're going to exclude him from the colony because he's got poison on him. And that's exactly what happens. So they exclude him, and then it only kills that one ant. And yeah, you might be able to spray, 10 million ants that you see on your driveway, but you're only going to kill the ones you can see. So it's going to only be as effective as the ants you can actually see. And it's the same with just about any pesticide. But that's what's unique about fipronil is they can't smell it. So you have 10,000 ants walk through it, they can't sense it, they take it down to the queen and down to the rest of the colony, and it completely wipes out the colony. And it doesn't just work for a few months. This stuff can work for years, which is great, as long as it's sprayed correctly. According to the label, there are a number of different ways to spray, and the label, at least on the brand Termidor, is more geared towards termite use. It does have subsections for ants and hornets and wasps, but I've honestly only ever used this for ants, so I can't speak for its uses on termites or hornets or wasps, and to be quite frank, I don't like using it for hornets or wasps. Because if it kills those kind of colony bugs like hornets and wasps, it also will kill bees, which is one of its cons. And I put that the very first one because I consider that to be most important. It can be very, very dangerous for bees, so it's very important to know where you're spraying this. And if there's going to be a bee there, you probably shouldn't be spraying there. And so it's going to be on things like flowers, whether it's a flowering plant or a flowering fruit or vegetable or whatever it may be. I don't spray this stuff on flowers ever because it kills bees. Another one of the cons is it is kind of expensive. More expensive than your deltamethrin, and in my own personal experience, it is not as effective for other bugs. I don't spray this stuff for spiders because spiders aren't colony bugs, and it doesn't work as effectively for them. It still kills them, yes, but I use this for ants, and it works incredibly. Another problem with it too is that if the last bullet point says ineffective if other pesticides contact it. That is not to say that if I sprayed bifenthrin on this, fipronil would degrade and be gone, but rather the bugs would be able to smell the bifenthrin, and that would therefore completely null and void the effectiveness of the bugs not being able to smell it, because now they could smell the bifenthrin that's there, and the bugs will avoid it. So when I spray this, I will spray fipronil first if I have a really bad ant problem, and I'll let it sit for a few weeks before I spray anything else, because then I can let the fipronil do all of its work and have all of its effectiveness and kill all of the ants around. And then when the ants are gone, then I can start spraying other stuff. And that's if it's a really, really bad problem. If I only have ants on a few parts of the property, then I'll spray those parts. And then I'll usually give at least a 25-foot radius of wherever I've sprayed fipronil before I start spraying anything else. So for instance, I spray one corner of my house, I won't spray anything within 25 feet of there of any other kind of pesticide, just to make sure that it's getting its full effectiveness. If you have more questions on fipronil, they actually have a really good video on their website, or at least of the Termidor website, and I believe you can actually do training even as just a normal civilian without having any kind of license. And it is really beneficial, and they have some really cool studies on there to show how long it lasts, how effective it is. If I'd known about fipronil previous to it coming out in the market, I probably would have bought a whole bunch of stock in it, but I didn't. So the next one is glue traps. Glue traps are really nice because they're super cheap and you can see what bugs are present. So let's say you have a whole bunch of different bugs, but you want to find out what they actually are. Glue traps are a good way to kind of diagnose what bugs are present inside. Like I said, you got to ID your bug before you start spraying stuff, because the bug you're spraying for may not be listed on the pesticide you're using, and so it would be totally ineffective, or at least very less effective. Some of the cons is that you do in fact see bugs. So if you don't like that, or your wife doesn't like that, or your kids don't like that, that can be a problem. But it's good to put them in places where bugs are. And bugs are usually going to travel along cracks and crevices along the edges of walls, so they're pretty easy to conceal, and they're really effective. Another problem is they can fill up. So if you get, you get 100,000 crickets coming into your house, they're going to fill up pretty quick, and yeah, it might catch 50 or 60 of them, but obviously it's going to fill up. Another problem is that you might catch something else, like a mouse, or a snake, or a kid. And I've had all those things happen. And it's important to know that most glue traps, at least the cheap ones, don't have any kind of poison on them. It's just glue on a piece of paper that you can fold up into a little box that looks nice. But it can still be pretty disconcerting. So if you do catch something else, good luck with that. I've caught mice, which isn't terribly unintentional. It's what a lot of people use them for. But it's sad, sometimes kind of sad to hear the mouse screaming in the middle of the night when you've caught it that it's starving to death. So that's sad, and I don't really like doing that, so good luck with that one. And if you catch a snake, then I've had that happen too, and I don't even want to share that experience because it wasn't a good experience for me. So we'll move on from that. The next one is deltamethrin dust. So it's just the same kind of thing as the other deltamethrin, except it's in dust form. Some of the pros is it's extremely durable, it's very broad spectrum, and it works okay when it's wet. Some of the cons is that it's difficult to disperse. And you'll see when you go look at it, or if you choose to go look at it, or even just Google it online, the tip of it is like a little paper cone tip. And depending on the location of where you're putting it, it can be difficult to disperse it. It can be, an outright pain to disperse it. And I really like this stuff because it is very effective and can last for an incredibly long time. But it's hard to get out. And you can buy a tool to disperse it. They're usually not too expensive. $10, $20 can get you one. I never found the reason to buy one, even when I owned a company, to disperse it, because I used it so infrequently. But it is a good option if you find you want to put something, let's say, inside your walls, because you have a lot of bug problems in your walls for some reason, or you have termites. It might be a good option to put in there. It's also good to put down with new construction because it can last for years and years and keep bugs out of your walls, if that's a concern where you live. So diatomaceous earth. Diatomaceous earth is very, very effective. It's super cheap. It's essentially effective forever, and it's completely non-toxic. They even make food-grade diatomaceous earth that you can put in with dried goods to kill beetles or whatever bugs may be getting in your dried food to do it. I don't do that, but they do make it so it's extremely safe. You could eat it with a spoon if you wanted to. I don't think it'd be terribly tasty, but more than welcome to try. Some of the cons, if it does get wet, it's totally worthless. And I work for a pest control company that had us use this during the wintertime. We'd go put it around people's cracks and crevices in their home and around windows and doors, things like that. And I'm sure it was reasonably effective, but if the bugs don't get enough of it on them, it's not going to work. How diatomaceous earth works is it will essentially wear a hole like sandpaper in the outer waxy coating of a bug. Now that waxy coating is usually what keeps the water inside the bug to keep it hydrated. If there's a hole in that waxy coating, bug dries out and dies. So it's good as long as the bug gets enough exposure to it, but it's not going to be super effective. I certainly wouldn't advise people to have it done in the wintertime. I think it's totally worthless, and that is part of the reason I quit from that first company that I worked for in the wintertime, because doing pest control in the wintertime is, in my opinion, not effective and is a total money scam and scheme. So the next one is cyfluthrin. This is also another one that's not as well understood. It is an extremely good pesticide, extremely expensive though. Some of the pros of it is very durable. It can also be used for its repellent features. Some of the cons is, like I said, very expensive. And another con is that some pest control companies use it as part of their normal service for repellent properties and not for the pesticide factor. And by that I mean what they do is they will dilute the pesticide so much that there is only a tiny bit of pesticide that they're spraying, which is good because it's less toxic, but it also does hardly anything for your pest control problem or for your pest problem. So they spray it, and because the bugs can essentially smell it, they will just jump to the next flower and to the next flower until they're on on your neighbor's yard, which is fine because they're not in your yard. But it doesn't kill the bugs, which I find to be a problem. Because if you have a pest problem, it's best not to push them on your neighbors or even just to push them out into the field behind you, because if there's that many bugs still, when your pesticide runs out, you're not going to have anything really stopping them when they really, really want to come in. Because if they're just using it for the repellent features, not the pesticide factor, if the bugs want to land on whatever is on your yard with cyfluthin in it, they will, unless it's sprayed to the correct label amount. So it is good, it does work very effectively, and especially for bugs that have kind of an unpredictable return, such as box elder bugs. Box elder bugs can be, they're not really damaging, but they're very unsightly in that they can basically come and plaster one side of your house, and instead of having a nice white paint on the outside of your house, now it looks like you have crawling black paint because they're so thick there. Cyfluthin is great because you can spray it once or twice a year and it will keep most of the box elder bugs. I won't say it'll keep all of them, but it will keep most of them off. So you can go from having billions to having hundreds. So it's very effective for bugs like that. And I would read the label on this one to see what bugs it's for and what ones it's going to be most effective for, because it is a very expensive pesticide. There's no reason to spend your money on cyfluthin to kill ants or to kill spiders, because it is a total waste. Like I said, I want to talk about bees. Bees are good. Very, very good. For more information, you can watch Animal Planet, Discovery Channel, or the Bee Movie, and they'll all explain why bees are good. Do all you can to preserve the bees in their environment by not spraying flowers, by not spraying where bees are normally going to land. Don't spray their nests unless you feel it's absolutely necessary or it is creating a serious danger to you or your family. And even then, bees are super docile for the most part, and they're going to leave you alone as long as you leave them alone. And obviously there's going to be instances where that can't be avoided and the bees have to be taken care of, but for the most part, bees are good, and they will fend off more aggressive flying bugs that are going to sting and hurt you more often. I understand some people have allergies to bees, which would make them more likely to get rid of them, which, if that's the case, then do what you need to do. But I like to keep bees around. They are very good for us and good for my fruits and my flowers and my vegetables. Some other random cautions to be aware of with any kind of pesticide. Some plants will die if you get pesticide on the leaves or anywhere near them, so be very careful with that. Some really common ones are Japanese, I can't remember the name right now offhand. They're Japanese red flowering trees though, and they're trees with red leaves. They're very, very pretty trees, very nice ornamental trees, but they are so incredibly sensitive that if you get any kind of pesticide on them, the leaves will die. And it's very important to even keep water off them in the middle or heat of the day, because they're so sensitive they can die from that. So something to be aware of. Another thing to be aware of is pesticide in your fruits and veggies. I've done reading on how pesticides could have the potential to get inside fruits and vegetables if you spray it on them. And that's just like from the root system into the actual fruit or vegetable itself. There's not a lot of science behind it, but I don't like the idea of pesticide being on or in my fruits or vegetables. So I don't like spraying it on them at all, unless it's absolutely necessary to save the plant, and I've never had it be that necessary. If I do spray my trees or my plants that have fruits or vegetables on them, I always use specifically labeled chemicals, and I have not listed any of them here. So if you're going to do that, go and find something and go talk to someone in either a store where they sell pesticides or go talk to another professional like an arborist or someone who works with plants and works with those kind of pesticides regularly, because it's specific enough that you need to have an expert hand on that one. Another thing is groundwater contamination. Pesticides are poisonous and they can contaminate your groundwater supplies, so be extremely careful with them. The state that I sprayed in, the general rule of thumb was if there is any standing water, you do not spray it, and you do not spray within 25 feet of it. And I held true to that because I don't want to be guilty of contaminating groundwater. I don't think anyone wants that on their resume. So be very careful with that. With pesticides and drying, I don't let my kids onto my lawn until the pesticide is completely dry. If there is dew on the grass and I've sprayed there recently, I wait till the dew is dry, because there's no reason to have my kids be exposed to it. With that said, you would also have to get an incredible amount of pesticide on you and on your children to have any serious effect, even if they were ill or even if they had a depressed immune system. It's important still to make sure you're reducing their exposure to it. With spraying inside, I only do it when my kids are going to be gone for an hour or more to make sure everything's dry. And my kids usually aren't walking around licking off the pesticide from my baseboards and other areas that I've sprayed, but it's still a good practice to have. Another good tip from that as well is if let's say I spray it in your kitchen where you have tile. If you use cleaner on your tile, your pesticide is gone, period. It will be taken off with any kind of cleaner. It is not designed to stay on for any extended period of time. It's designed to come off easily, so in the event it does need to come off, for whatever reason, it comes off easily. So keep that in mind. Another random note with firewood, because I know I have a lot of firewood, is pesticides are chemicals and they're not meant to be burned. And because of that, I do not spray my wood. Most laws will state that you can spray the wood as long as you don't use that wood for burning within 6 months. I don't spray mine at all. I spray around my wood because bugs going in and out of that wood pile will die from the pesticide. I don't want it on my wood because I don't want to be releasing those kind of fumes into my home or into the atmosphere. So that's my 2 cents on that. As far as where I spray, this is just going to be super quick, because this was supposed to be more on the chemicals itself and what to use. So when you are spraying, look outside where the bugs are. They're going to be outside in the cracks, the crevices, the eaves, around refuse piles like garbage, leaves, grass, and compost. A good place for them to hide is utility boxes, around windows, 6 feet up from structures and 6 feet out from structures is usually where I will spray. I also often do a perimeter around the entire yard, depending on where I live, or just like around the fence perimeter to make sure any bugs that are coming in or out of my property are dying. And continue to pour the spray on the inside, again, like I already mentioned, along the baseboards, along any cracks or crevices. Under sinks is a very popular spot for bugs to hang out. In the attic, in basements, around windows, including in the window tracks, around doors and including around the door tracks, and behind electrical covers if you're having bug problems inside of the walls is a great place to start. Now, this is an FYI. This information is all based on my own experience, my own opinion. So don't take it as doctrine, but it is good information nonetheless, and hope that you find it useful. Thank you.